Where would Florida State football be if Mike Norvell and his staff had managed the recruiting at the quarterback position and the rest of the roster much better?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Please hit that like button and that notification bell. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll receive $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today is a preview of tonight's 6 p.m. live show discussing the quarterback position, how it fluctuates with the positions around it, and whether or not it's okay to go to the portal, whether it's high school, whether it's both. It is a complicated situation, and I just kind of want to give an overview using Florida State and comparing it to other programs. There are 18 major programs, primarily going to focus on them. Those are the teams that can win a title, and of course, Florida State is one of those 18. So first off, let's be clear. From 2020, 2021, and 2022, Florida State does not have a quarterback on the roster from those three classes. Complete and utter whiff. You can never go two classes in a row where you fail at quarterback out of the high school ranks. They went three. Part of it is not their fault from 20 because they were coming in. I get that. But you still had 21 and 22. Didn't happen. So that means they got to go portal long term. At the point when they were going through this, they had Jordan Travis, ironically, a kid that had transferred from Louisville to Florida State. He was a South Florida guy, came back to his home state to play for the Noles. So it was kind of masked. Kind of. But we saw quickly what happens once Jordan got hurt last year. You had to throw in a freshman at quarterback. They got by because the defense played so well against Louisville, etc. That, the game against Florida, that's fine, but you don't want to play freshmen at the quarterback position, really, hardly any position, really. But you can't do it at quarterback. So that begs the first question that I have for everybody. Are you okay with consistently missing at the high school level of recruiting, if you're a Florida State fan, because you can get somebody in the portal? I don't think there's 100% one answer for this because there are a bunch of teams, as I'll show here in just a moment, that are doing well this year with transfer quarterbacks. Most quarterbacks in their career transfer. It's true. Or they get injured and their career is just over. Very few go through and live the dream of just playing at State U or whatever and being the guy and then going to the NFL. That is a very, very small margin. Just keep that in mind. Question 2 for you. Do you think Florida State, even after this year, let's say Brock doesn't develop a whole lot, do you think they should go to the portal and take a guy, let him develop one more year? Hard to say how that's going to turn out, but I think he's going to do a little better than just okay. I don't think he's going to flatline, but if it happens, would you? Something to think about. Question 3, and this is a very, very big one. Do you think Florida State's coaching staff, as it stands today, is good enough at recruiting the high school ranks to make Florida State a viable national championship football team, starting with quarterback recruiting, year in and year out? That's got to be a yes, no. If it's not a definitive yes, chances are, in my experiences, the answer is no. That's something else we're going to talk about. So here are a few things that I want to discuss, starting with just the 18. I mentioned that a moment ago, just as a refresher, and this is no specific order, by the way. These are just off the top of my head, the 18 that I came up with. A lot of it was based on the order I went with this, how much they're struggling at quarterback. Michigan wins the title last year. Had a great quarterback, didn't have to use him a ton, but when he needed to be, he was clutch. Goes, I think, 10th overall in the draft. Michigan's quarterback recruiting since was terrible. They stink at quarterback right now. They got walk-ons. They got a guy that was a kid I saw at Elite 11, the Orgy kid who can't throw it in the ocean if he's swimming in it. They stink on offense because they struck out at quarterback. And then they didn't get anybody in the portal either that really mattered. That is baffling to me. It shouldn't be that hard if you're Michigan, ever, especially after a national title. Auburn, here's a stat for you. When you miss at quarterback multiple times, this is what can happen. Out of 134 teams in the FBS, the Tigers are 133 in interceptions. Oh boy, that is bad. Bama is one of the 18 that can win a title, but they're in kind of a weird situation. Saban retires after the season. Obviously, DeBoer completely screwed up the game against Vandy. He was outcoached, and that program's in trouble, but we're just talking quarterback here. The guy that he inherited is not a pure passing quarterback. I don't think that's a fit, so it's not really a good situation to compare. Similarly, Ohio State, they've got a passing system that is very, very affluent, similar to Bama, but is that the perfect situation? Because their quarterback is a guy that when he was at Kansas State can run around and do some things. He's probably better fit at Florida State, to be honest with you. He's done pretty well, but they haven't played anybody. We'll know more about them when they play Oregon this next weekend. Penn State is the dream. Drew Aller was a top 5 quarterback by everybody's account. He was a top 5 player by 24/7. He's kind of struggled the first couple of years, but now he's kind of turned it on. They hired a really good coordinator. That kind of helps too. So there you go. Notre Dame's recruited quarterback good the last couple of years, but they don't have him in the lineup yet. They brought in Riley Leonard. I think that's more of a coaching problem. It's not the offense coordinator. It's the head coach. He's very stubborn about throwing the ball. He's a very defensive-minded guy. That's something else. Even if you recruit it well, you've got to let him go throw. That's one of the reasons Bowden ended up being a great coach at Florida State. He went through some of the struggles. You're going to have quarterbacks make mistakes. They will not achieve greatness if they don't go through the process. Notre Dame's going to find that out the hard way, I have a feeling, here pretty soon. Southern Cal, quarterback plays good. They're just the opposite of Notre Dame. They don't focus enough on defense. Look, the head coach at Southern Cal is the most overrated coach in college football. He is now 5-7 in his last 12 games, even with the weak quarterbacks that he gets out of the high school ranks. That's ridiculously bad. Oregon, they are the happy medium. They're another program that's recruited high school pretty well over the years, but things have gone awry. They didn't get one, but they got 2 transfers. They got one for this year, Dylan Gabriel, and they got Dante Moore waiting in the wings. I thought he was the best player in the country a couple of years out of high school ranks. They are an anomaly to hit 2 like that. We'll see how it works with Moore long-term, but Dylan Gabriel has got them in the national title hunt. Texas, they get the mullet from Ohio State after a year. If you remember back, he went to Ohio State so he could get the NIL money. Then he transferred to Texas. They also have a certain guy with the name Manning. You might have heard of him on their roster. They got a high school. They're in a great situation. The Aggies, they got 2 high school quarterbacks that are pretty good players. One's finally healthy. They should be good to go long term. Again, they hit in high school. It's going to pay dividends. Nico Iamaleava is struggling a little bit, but he's got a cannon, got a lot of talent. Playing a year early, kind of like the situation I think at Florida State, but he's a very talented player. He's got one of the strongest arms I've ever seen. I think that's a guy you're going to see at the NFL level after his 3rd year, but they had to play him a year early because they didn't hit prior to him. Georgia, probably as well managed at the quarterback position in recruiting of the high school ranks as any team in the country, and that's why they're in the position they're in. They get a transfer every now and then, but they do one, and then they do the other. They don't do one or the other. They find guys no matter what. They overstock the position. If somebody leaves, they go find somebody else. Georgia's done a really good job. LSU's recruited it just as well as Georgia, but unlike Georgia, they don't coach it well enough in practice, I see, because the defense is a mess and they're not doing something right. Brian Kelly has screwed that up royally. All that talent on offense, even with quarterback Nussmeier, et cetera, it doesn't matter because their defense is atrocious. So that's really sad. Cade Klubnik is another sign that you need at least a couple of years in the high school ranks, or excuse me, college ranks after high school, as a rule, to make it. They're a great sign, and you saw that last week in Doak. He hit big plays early in the game as a runner, early in the game as a passer, and when it wasn't there, he didn't just throw it to the wrong team. He checked down. They would rather punt. They didn't play great on offense second half. Florida State's defense deserves credit, but again, they didn't give the game away. And when they needed to, they made enough first downs to grind it out, made it difficult on Florida State, and they got a win. So again, you sign elite high school kids, you develop them. It takes time. Florida State, obviously, the 20, 21, 22 classes, we just talked about that. That's a problem. Florida might get bailed out. They're another one of the teams that can win a title traditionally. DJ Lagway is the long-term savior, and they got a pretty good quarterback as a 6th-year senior. They got lucky as their starter in Graham Mertz. So they got a nice combination there. They might be a pretty decent team the rest of the year, but their defense is a joke. I just don't think Napier's the guy. We'll see if Lagway's still in Florida next year. I have a feeling he will be elsewhere. Miami, They got bailed out by getting Cam Moore. Let's not kid ourselves. Emory Williams is probably the long-term guy for them. He's a sophomore out of the Panhandle. But again, development, need a couple of years. We'll see how that goes. Ward got him to this point, and I know they're still looking as a possibility going into the portal, but we'll see. Oklahoma, final school that I want to mention. This is a really great example of how you screw it up. Oklahoma, it's not that hard. Texas, especially North Texas, is full of quarterbacks, and they still didn't get anybody that's a junior, senior, fifth-year senior right now on their roster that's any good. How does that happen at Oklahoma? That's pretty terrible. That's what's going on, though, and because of their offense is a joke, they got a true freshman in there that's not ready. The sophomore is not quite ready either. Either one of them could be the quarterback the rest this season or next year, but you got to have juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors. Every year you need to hit at the high school level. So that's just something to think about. It's not just Florida State that struggled at quarterback. A lot of teams have. If you miss out of the high school ranks, it puts a really high importance level of being the perfect fit in the portal. And there's only a couple of guys. Everybody's going after them. You got like 15, 20 schools that want a quarterback, maybe 2 to 4 that are desirable. Look at Auburn. You know what I mean? Like Michigan State's another one. They got lucky that the coach they got, he brings in Childs, the kid that he had at Oregon State. He's still not ready, but at least he's developing this year. You need guys that are experienced. Every year you got to get a good quarterback. And when you miss, you pay the piper. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the quarterback position specific to Florida State and how it impacts the players around them, not only the ones that are already on the roster, but also the ones that you recruit. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. All right, Locked On Seminoles fans, it's time for the Roy Player of the Week. The Roy app lets you directly support your favorite athletes. Unlike collectives where you make a donation to a general fund, Roy lets you choose the specific athlete you want to support. You back the players you care about, and in return, get exclusive content after the season, like personal videos and updates. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't create the content, you get your money back. This week's player I'm going to choose is Brock Glenn. It's because he made his first start, and quite honestly, going against Clemson, he earned it. He had over 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and he took a beating and just kept playing. The guy was gritty. He kind of represents Florida State as a blue-collar kind of school in terms of how he is a blue-collar kind of player. I really respect it. Just contribute $100 to his campaign on Roy, and I want you to join me by making a payment for as little as $10. If enough of us contribute, it's not just about the dollars. It's about the message we send to Brock or anybody else altogether. Our collective support helps us get connected to the school. Plus, Roy is doing their part to bring fans closer to schools and athletes in an exciting giveaway. Roy is giving one lucky fan 2 tickets to any game of their choice in November. Here's how to enter. Download the Roy app on Google Store or Google Play or the App Store and use code LOCKEDON when you sign up and you're entered. Already on Roy, make a payment to any athlete's campaign and you'll also be automatically entered. No purchases necessary, void where prohibited. Join Roy today for official rules. Download Roy and try it out. There's no subscription, no recruiting fees. And again, for as little as $10, you can get in the NIL game. Roy, support the players, change the game. If Florida State would have hit on the 20, 21, or 22 class, just one of the 3 at quarterback, where would they be now? If they had a 5th-year senior that was just a good player that could have kind of helped Brock along, maybe he wasn't as talented as Brock, but just a guy that would have stuck around, would have fit the system, etc., that'd have been great. So obviously Norvell and his staff didn't have the same time to recruit that kid to Florida State because they were coming over from Memphis. I get it. But just hypothetically, if you want to go with the 21 class, that's fine. That is their class. But to miss on 21 and 22, again, the onus was put on Brock to be ready. Is he? Probably not, but he is going to get a baptism by fire. If nothing else, the rest of this season, he's likely to be the Noles quarterback, and then he will be an experienced player in 2025. But here's the caveat. If you have Brock or anybody else at quarterback that is coming out in 21, let's say Brock would the exact same players in that class, and you've got a guy that's a senior that's been through it for a few years, he's a redshirt junior, do you think it would have helped recruiting? because you can tell the guys coming in on all these unofficial and official visits. Not only do we have Jordan Travis over the last few years, this guy's ready. He's going to be the guy that replaces Jordan. Don't you think it would have helped recruiting a little bit? And I'm not just talking about wide receiver. I'm not just talking about tight end. Even not just O-line. Great players want to play with other great players. You cannot miss at quarterback recruiting. If you miss 2 years in a row, you're in trouble. Again, FSU missed 3. It just can't happen. Auburn's in the same boat. Michigan's in the same boat. You miss like that, you can go from a team at the top to the bottom. And if you're a team trying to ascend, look at Auburn. They're in the SEC, so there's no easy route. They may not win an SEC game. Their remaining schedule, I looked at it. They got to go to Missouri. They got to go to Kentucky. They got to go to Alabama. They got to play Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt just beat Alabama. Who knows? That's not very friendly. And they got A&M at home. Good luck to the Tigers. You miss at quarterback, you miss in the win-loss column. So that brings up the other big question. What is the situation that you think, I brought it up in the beginning of the show, can you miss in the high school ranks? Do you mind that much? Do you think that Florida State has enough cachet and enough NIL dollars, because it's going to be big money again, this December to go get a quarterback? I don't know. If Brock gets hurt or if he just kind of falls off the earth, I don't think either of those will happen. But if they did, you got to go back into the market. You start this over again. The good news is finally for Florida State, you got Brock as a sophomore. You got Luke Kromenhoek as a freshman. And then you got Tramell Jones Jr. as a senior in high school. So you got 3 years in a row, you got a quarterback. That's important. You need to be in that situation each and every year. You get a good player. Somebody's going to fall off. Somebody's going to transfer. Somebody's going to get hurt. Whatever. I get all that. But if you get guys each and every year, it'll take care of itself. And if you need to, in a desperation situation because of a weird transfer, somebody gets kicked out of school, whatever, okay, you go to the portal. In my opinion, you can no longer just go to the portal as a primary. And I'm not just talking about quarterback. Florida State in general, I've said it for a long time, they needed to reduce. Quarterback's the spot where every third or fourth year, you're probably going to have to because kids are going to transfer because they didn't win the job. That's unavoidable. That's not a Florida State problem. That is the history of college football. For 40 plus years, me watching this sport, guys have transferred like crazy. Over half the quarterbacks leave. Just the way it is. That's not going to suddenly change, especially with NIL being an availability. That being the case, again, you up your odds if you are consistent in your efforts as a recruiting staff, which again, tonight's 6 p.m. live show, that's going to be very important. Air your grievances, which coaches should or should not go at the end of this season. I'm going to discuss it in length too, so we'll talk about that then. When we come back, I want to talk about the mission of Florida State staff for the rest of this year, just in recruiting. This is a very critical stretch. I've been waiting to kind of go into this because I figured there'd be some news breaking at least one way, if not both. Good news and bad in recruiting. It hasn't as the time of this recording, but I'm going to discuss that next on Locked On Seminoles. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest news, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here's the question that I have. From my history of following recruiting, being a recruiting analyst, and being around the back scenes of what's really going on, talking to 7-on-7 coaches, high school coaches, the recruits, their parents, there's one sure way to find out if a coach is really committed to any given program. TCU, Boston College, Ohio, USC, I don't care what it is. Are they ardently putting in effort with the group of players that they're assigned to recruit? That's a checkbox. Yes or no? Based on how Florida State is recruited, despite the name on the jersey and that incredible helmet that Florida State wears, I don't think this staff has done a very good job under Norvell historically. They've underachieved. That's pretty basic, and it's not very difficult to tell. This past year, as an example, they signed a class borderline top 10. That should be absolutely unequivocally the bottom of what a Florida State staff does. It's one of the easiest jobs in the country to recruit. The 300-mile radius from Tallahassee is freaking loaded. No excuses. Tampa, Orlando, Atlanta, Montgomery, Pensacola, Jacksonville, South Georgia, all those small schools that produce talent. Same in Alabama. And they're not getting top 10 classes. That's a problem. But now that a lot of them are on the hot seat, it's going to be very interesting if you read any reports, 24/7, On3, Rivals. And I'm going to be checking very soon too. We're about to that point where some guys know they're probably not going to be around. I'm curious to see what their recruiting effort is, because just think about it logically. If you don't expect to be somewhere, are you going to quote unquote recruit for the future at that place? No. We'll find out real quick who expects to be there or who's already found another job. This is one of the things that goes on in college football. If you don't like the situation or think you're going to get canned, you take another job quietly behind closed doors with another coach that you know. It's the buddy-buddy system. That way, at the end of the year, if you get canned, you don't care. You take the check and you go sign another one. It's the sick reality of college football. They'll get paid from Florida State for being fired, and they get a coaching job at pick a school, and the same thing happens. Or maybe they go to the NFL as some analyst or something. I'm curious to see how this goes. Florida State is not in a good situation with their 2025 recruiting class. I'm being kind. They have to find a way to finish up in a very difficult situation. I don't know how you do that, but I'm just pre-warning people that this could be a very sloppy end. Signing day is December 4th. I do not expect it to go well, obviously, because they're playing poorly on the field, and I expect some coaches to be let go either before or end of the season. I don't know how they'll do that, but I expect coaches to be gone in one shape or form. Maybe some guys just leave, and that's going to impact recruiting. It is not a good situation, but Florida State's got to find a way to navigate it nonetheless. Good luck with that. At the same time, for the long term, that's probably for the best. Again, this staff to date under Norvell has not done a good job. That's not just my opinion. That is every single recruiting analyst that I have spoken to in the last 2 years. Not one person I've talked to said this was a good staff as in a recruiting group at an elite school. Not one. What does that tell you? Come hell, come high water, you got to change some things. And maybe some of it will take care of itself by finding new jobs. But whatever it is, look for change after this season at Florida State University. This coaching staff will not be the same in 2025. That's going to wrap up the show. And again, 6 p.m. tonight, going to do a live show, Florida State area grievances, talk about the quarterback situation, the essential. That's the positive news. But I am going to let part of the show fans just kind of go off, and I'm just going to read the comments, the ones I can. If you're cussing, I can't read them. But at the same time, it's just here's what I think about Florida State football, the coaching staff, Brock Glenn, whatever you want to talk about. I imagine most of it would be quarterback and coaching, but we're going to have some fun with it. Please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast. I truly appreciate it. And make sure you check out my guy, Spencer McLaughlin at Locked On College Football. There's so much going on after this past weekend. And we got another big weekend coming up. Florida State doesn't play, but I'm going to enjoy watching a lot of the games. I hope you do as well. I will talk to you again tonight at 6 p.m.